How do I do this? Hi, my name is Isaac. I use they, them pronouns, non-binary, and I am starting hormones on Tuesday this week. I'm AMAB, and it's very exciting for me, if you can't tell. But the point of this video is not to express how excited I am. I'm very excited, but instead to give information to people who want to go on hormones, who are non-binary, and who are AMAB, because there's also not a lot of content, and I wish there was more when I was first researching it. I think Wonder does he has a holistic life update thing about going on estrogen. And so I wanted to put some content out there that was like, I wish I had, and I hope other people can use. And kind of going up to the process of getting my prescription, because it was actually a pretty long process. I don't think I expected it to be that long, but it was pretty long. And kind of my journey and like my philosophical understanding of like what was going on and like what I wanted to do, and kind of also the mechanics of it, and like talking to the doctor, talking to a therapist, that kind of thing. When I first, mentally transitioned, I think I immediately was like, this means I can go on hormones if I want to, and like I don't need to like not go on hormones in order to affirm my gender identity. I can go on hormones. And so I'm like, when I first accepted this about myself, I emailed I messaged my primary care doctor and was like, hi, I'm transgender. Can you refer me to an endocrinologist to begin, steps to start transitioning? And she was really nice about it. She like wrote me back. We were messaging each other on this app called MyChart. If you have insurance and if you are part whatever hospital you go to regularly, they probably have an app, and my suggestion would be get this app. If it's a MyChart app, get a MyChart, because I was emailing my doctors constantly, sending them messages, looking at updating my prescription, and that was really important to have. The MyChart app sucks. I hate it. It's horrible. I have a lot of issues with that app, but it does allow me to contact my doctors in a direct way, and which I wouldn't have done if I didn't have it. So she referred me to an endocrinologist, and I had an appointment. It was like 3 months out. The day before my appointment, the person emailed me and was like, you need a transgender youth endocrinologist. You can't have just an endocrinologist. And I was like, I was pissed. I was pissed for like a day. I mean, it didn't last very long, and like, I was like, all right. Like, we can schedule you for the next month. And within the next month, and I was like, I guess I literally have no control over this at all. So do that, and I'll just wait. So that was a little frustrating. So, make sure that when you get a referral, make sure it's from a transgender endocrinologist and they serve trans people, because apparently normal endocrinologists do not, which is like, okay. And but I think that initial like hurdle, or like that initial step, really like changed how I felt about it. And I was like reacted in a way in which I was like, oh, I do want this. Like, I was upset, and I wasn't super upset. Like, I wasn't like, I'm gonna go kill myself, which hopefully you're not. But like, it did indicate to me that I wanted this, and that it wasn't just like, oh, well, this is an option in my life now. Like, I can consider this option. It was like, oh no, I want this. And so I then had the appointment, and at this point I was living with my current roommates, and I had my appointment like in my car on the side of our driveway, and they had messaged me before and was like, my doctor, like the transgender health doctor is out of town for this day, so we are going to need to schedule this for the next day, but the therapist is in today, so why don't you go see the psychologist, and then the next day you'll see the doctor, which isn't that big of a deal. But at that point I realized, oh, this is a psychologist. Like, they have and I didn't realize this before, and I don't know how. I guess I should have known, but like, and probably why I'm making this video, but you need a psychologist. They need a psychological referral for you. And so I was like, oh wow, I did not realize there was like some kind of psychological evaluation. Definitely in my brain I was like, this is California, they're woke, like they're not gonna pathologize my gender, but no, they do. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when scheduling appointments. And so I had both appointments. They asked me some questions in the psychological appointment about like how I felt about my gender identity and like stuff like that. After that appointment, on my MyChart page, thank you MyChart, it said I had gender dysphoria, which means I must have indicated to them that I had gender dysphoria. I may or may not have said that I had gender dysphoria, and we'll get into that in like the kind of my thinking around the whole thing. They were like, you got 3 things to do. Number 1, get blood tests. Number 2, get a referral. Number 3, sign this digital document. I was like, damn. They send you through some hoops, which I'm like, okay, I can do that. But they're hoops. It's not just like 1-2 step, which I kind of thought it was. So I went and got a blood test, which was super easy. The psychological referral was different. Luckily, I have a therapist, and I was seeing a therapist a couple months before I had the appointment, like about 3 or 4 months before. And so the situation with, I like talked to my therapist. I was like, give me this letter of referral, and she's like, I got you. And so I had a template. I sent it to my therapist. She sent it back. They were like, you need to have these specific things in it. And I sent it back and forth. The whole time I was like, oh my God, I want my fucking hormones. At that point I was kind of like, all right, what now. We need it now. And I signed the document. And then after that, it took a couple weeks for them to process it or something. I don't really know. But it took a little bit. It wasn't immediate. But I didn't have to go in through to another appointment in which they were like, oh, you did all these things. Good job. Here's your drugs. No, they were just like, it's prescribed for you. And I checked on my MyChart to go get the drugs. And that's where I am now. My advice for anyone who is, maybe thinking about hormones, just start the process. don't, like, just start it. If you're maybe even, you're like, I'm not really sure, like, just start it, and like, you can figure out if you like hormones or not when you take hormones. That was my thinking. Because it's so long, and like, it took like a good like 4 or 5 months before I got the prescription, and from when I started. And if you have more dysphoria than I do, like, that can be a lot of time. So just start it. You don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't, like, you don't need to do it. Just start the process. You can talk. Make sure you get a therapist. When I was in my initial appointment, they're like, all right, well, you need a psychological therapist in order for you to get this letter to be signed. And I was like, thank God I already have a therapist that I've already been talking to. Because if I didn't, you'd need to talk to that therapist for a couple months in order for it to be like legitimate. And so they can send a letter for you. All that stuff about psychological like letters and stuff, that's all transphobia. Like, that's all transphobia. And there's times when I got very frustrated by that process, because I was like, this is literally like fucking transphobic. Probably much easier than in other states, but like, and like more transphobic states, but like, this shouldn't be a thing. Like, and I would talk to like my friends and like my fucking therapist and be like, yo, this is like it's really annoying that they had this like letter that I had to send. And they're like, oh, it's to make sure that like the fake trans people like don't start hormones. And I'm like, that is dumb. That's assuming that trans people are trying to like ruin their bodies, or that by taking hormones, if a cis person took hormones, you don't have to be trans to take hormones. If a cis person took hormones, they would ruin their body. Like, no. You are not ruining your body by taking hormones. You're not. This is for you. I think, yeah. So my thinking changed throughout this process. And obviously my thinking will change when I start hormones. But I think initially what I thought was like, I want to try this. And not that I wanted a goal to have. I didn't have a goal initially. I was just like, well, this is something I can try. And like, maybe I'll stop being depressed or something. Like, I don't know. I clearly, I feel like once you figure out your gender identity, you're like, oh, clearly I did not know myself very well. No one told me that, but I clearly did not know myself very well. And so like, I can just try this thing and maybe I'll get to know myself better. And so that was like how I was kind of going into it. That's how I kind of pitched it to my doctors and my therapists. I think one particular thing that you need to kind of have, which is really weird, and I didn't realize this until I like got the diagnosis from the doctor, was that like they diagnosed me with gender dysphoria, which when I first was, figuring myself out and like finding new labels for myself, I was like, I don't really have gender dysphoria. I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck I am. So like, I don't know what that word means, and I wouldn't actually necessarily identify with that word, gender dysphoria. I don't really know what that means. I don't know what that, like, but like, it was kind of clear from the process that you need to have gender dysphoria in order to get hormones. So here's my suggestion. If you're non-binary, the medical system, listen to this, the medical system is transphobic. Just fucking lie to them. If you don't think you have dysphoria, that's great. You can still take hormones. You can still want to take hormones. Do it. Go take hormones. Like, but you're gonna need to lie to your doctors, or not lie, but just be like, well, they don't really know what they're talking about. There's, so they don't really get it. Let's be honest. So whether or not you have dysphoria, just say that you do. And so like, that also kind of changed like how I thought about dysphoria. And throughout this process, I've kind of changed how I thought about hormones in general. And because I was like, oh, well, I'm not transitioning to be a girl. I don't think I'm going to change my pronouns. I don't think I'm going to change how I identify if I have different hormones in my body. So it was more kind of like, but I started to kind of understand what dysphoria was when I kind of started to like try to see myself after physically transitioning, or like how I wanted to look after I physically transitioned, and like how that person would be. And I was like, fuck, why am I not that person? But I didn't necessarily feel, I wouldn't describe it as like, I don't feel like I'm in my body right now. I have a whole like idea now about, I think I have like conceptualized my own idea about gender dysphoria and like how I feel about that and like what that is to me. I wouldn't necessarily say I have it, because as an agender person, I'm like, okay, like I'm just being perceived, like y'all are just perceiving me, like I didn't there's nothing I can do that I can make myself have less of a gender to myself. Maybe to other people, but to myself, I'm like, I already have less of a gender. So that's the most important part. So yeah. And I am now of the thinking that you don't need gender dysphoria to take hormones. You don't need to be trans to take hormones. You can take hormones if you want to take hormones, and you can still identify as a cis person. Fire. Do it. I think more of hormones is like, I'm just like customizing my avatar. Like, I want my avatar to look like this, and in order to do that, I have to take hormones. But I'm like, you don't need to say that I'm like have an illness in order to customize my avatar. Like, I'm just customizing my avatar, dude. Like, I'm trying to look cool. And have boobs. Why are y'all rocking on my shit? Yeah. And I'll let you guys know how taking hormones goes. Maybe I'll hate it. I don't know. Like, I might hate it. That's always an option. I have like two transition goals. One, I'll put them up. But like one of them is like me if I don't take hormones, because I was like, well, what if the government is just like, fuck you, and they're like, stop. So it's like, what if I don't like it? Here's my transition goal if I don't take hormones. Here's my transition goal if I do take hormones. And I made two, which I feel like was pretty helpful, because I'm like, well, worst case scenario, I look cool in this way instead of cool in like a boob way. I know this is something that I want to do, and something I want to explore. And I feel like if I don't do this, I won't know myself. So do it if you can. Obviously, if you can. There's lots of reasons that you may not be able to. Yeah. Okay.